Good evening once again on this wonderful, wonderful evening, and welcome once again, my friends, to the Leo and Larry Show. I'm Reverend Leo Whitberry, and our host Larry Smith is not with us for this particular episode, but he'll be back again really, really soon. Our guest this evening is a Miss Vanessa Boatright. And Vanessa Boatright is the executive director of All Aboard for Justice. It's an organization that's located right here in South Carolina, and they do amazing work. And some of you may be hearing the name Boatright and saying, hey, didn't we hear from an Xavier Boatright? Yep, that's right. Good things come in the same package and the same family sometimes. So welcome, Miss Vanessa Boatright, to the Leo and Larry Show. Glad to have you as a guest.
Yes, I'm pleased to be here and to share with you all some of the information about our agency and our organization and how we run things.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we always ask our guests, we say, hey, we need some background information, people's credibility and their, authority and their expertise. A lot of times people want to know, especially in this era, when we have talking heads who sometimes tell you the truth and sometimes it's the alternative truth or whatever that is. So why don't you tell our folks out there in Radio Land about yourself, your background, some history, and hey, what brought you to All Aboard for Justice? That's quite a name.
Yes, I'm Vanessa Boatright, and I have been in human services and social welfare for the past, I would say, 40 years. My experience spans human services, community outreach, community advocacy, and community organization. I'm what you call a macro social worker. I work more with policy and on the back end of social justice and environmental justice, grant writing, and that type of thing. I received my MSW from the University of South Carolina and my BS degree from Morris College. Also have done additional work at the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio, as well as several other universities across the nation. Like I said, I've worked in community organizing and human services for the past 40 years, have been very interested in environmental types of affairs and environmental justice. And I had an opportunity to join All Aboard for Justice as their executive director just in the past 2 years. But our agency, our background, we started as a response to Hurricane Matthew back in 2018. Hurricane Matthew occurred in 2016. But with all my years of experience in academia and research, it leads me to where I am today with All Aboard for Justice.
And so you said your background in academia. We heard about the schools you go to. What do you do anything with academia now?
Yes, I currently teach for Limestone University out of Gaffney, and I am the assistant director of MSW Field Education, and I'm assistant professor there. I've been with Limestone for the past 26 years, but I've been in academia probably for about 32 years. So I'm actually in the social work department there and have been, for my tenure there with Limestone. And I work with other universities. I work with the University of Tennessee as an adjunct, University of South Carolina, Coker College, have provided some adjunct for South Carolina State and Claflin University.
Wow. So I started off talking about credibility and credentials, and you got them, don't you? So so when you talk about agencies and social work and needs for various communities, you know where the rubber hits the road. So you also mentioned, you said the environment, and that is something now that is really big every day in this country and around the world. Something is happening with our environment when it comes to climate change. But there's also environmental issues that have been happening for, hundreds of years, since the 1800s, and people aren't aware of it. What kind of environmental issues does All Aboard for Justice
Well,
deal with?
we're dedicated to protecting and preserving natural resources through education. So we really boost community education, getting those persons in the community educated about the environment around them, how we need to protect it, how we need to preserve it, and make it work for us in our, day and time. So we currently work with like energy justice, social justice, and we kind of work on the political scene a little bit with advocacy, but we don't necessarily, we're not at the forefront of that, but we support those political types of activities that will promote environmental justice.
Okay, great. So you said, what did you say? You said energy justice. What's energy justice? I mean, they have all kind, criminal justice, environmental justice, climate justice, social justice. What's energy justice?
Well, energy justice and our focus right now is trying to lessen that burden that the marginalized communities, low income, Black, Hispanic, and Native American households, the energy bills that they face with our local co-ops. And our focus and our thrust has been to educate the members of the co-ops their options and the kinds of resources that are afforded to them to help them not to have to realize a high energy bill. So we've been setting up town halls, community information forums to educate those persons about how to save energy, how to get out and know who your public commissioners are, how to actually contribute to board membership in electing board members that represent our interests. So that's some of the energy stuff that we do. We try to lessen the burdens or the hardship of those particular populations.
Okay, because electric co-ops were formed back in the 40s by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because at first the utilities, they just provided electricity for cities and towns because they felt like there's not enough people out in the countryside to give us a return on our investment. All the money we have to spend to run the power lines and transformers and transmitters and all the rest of this stuff, and burn coal and have that. So a lot of people don't realize when you talk about educating people around co-ops, who owns the electric co-ops? Who owns them? Because a lot of our folks out there may have PD Electric Co-op or Santee Cooper or so many more, and they don't realize that they what? They
They actually own the co-ops. The members, the persons who actually pay the electric bills, they own the co-ops. And a lot of people, in the community, we say lay people in the community, they have not realized that they actually have an active voice that can make a difference, and they own a part of that co-op by being a member and receiving, electricity from the co-ops.
Mhm. So
So this is something that we try to help them to realize, that you do have a voice, you do have options, you do have resources. We just need to help you to plug into those resources, identify the resources so that you can plug into them.
So that means if the people who pay their bills to electric co-op, who actually own the electric co-op, if a group of them wanted the co-op to, let's say, build a solar farm in a certain community, or create a program where people can make their homes more energy efficient, they can, you're telling me if there's enough of them that they can actually vote for the co-op to work on doing those things?
Yes, and we can stimulate that type of participation among the members, then yes, they'll have voting options where we can actually encourage or have an impact on decision making with the co-ops to use alternative forms of sustainable energy, such as the solar panels and other types of alternative energy.
Mhm. And well, see, that's great. A lot of people don't know that because, well, and I'm sure you've had people come to you say, hey, I have some land and I would like to, see a solar farm in our community. And they may be a member of an electric co-op and they have no idea that, hey, that might be possible if enough of the owner of the owner customers or owner ratepayers actually decide they want to do that, right?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah. And how about board? Because co-ops they have boards, board of directors, and who serves on these boards? Who can serve on these boards?
Board options are for the members. Members can serve on the board. So another thing with getting out and communicating these types of things to the members, a lot of members don't know that they can actually buy or run for a board seat. So that's the information that we're putting out there. They can run for a board seat so they can bring the opinion of their community to those meetings and have a seat at the table, or have a voice in what is decided in terms of, their energy.
And being a member of the board is this a volunteer position or paid position?
It's an elected position that's paid. And, of
Oh.
course, it's paid and it
Mhm.
has other options, for compensation, but of course, it's a paid position. And then a lot of folks don't know that, these positions exist and how to actually go about becoming a board member or actually running for the board.
Wow, I bet there's a lot of people out there in community. Some of them are community leaders. Some of them are just regular folks, as you said, lay people and pastors. And a lot of folks, I'm sure, you know, probably would, might be interested in it. So how does that process work? They have annual meetings. How does that process work?
They have annual meetings. Each co-op has an annual meeting where they have a list of candidates, that have been vetted and are on the ballot, have ran their campaign, and the board members or the co-op members can vote for those persons presented on that ballot. Now, to get on the ballot, there are different organizations that we work with. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we do to help to stimulate more participation among the members. We work with several partners across the state, but we specifically work with Watershed Conservation Voters of South Carolina to provide that training, also resources for campaign funding, and they also provide certain leadership training that candidate would need in order to run a successful campaign. So we are one of the agencies, which there are several agencies that go out in the community, provide these town halls, educational forums, or community forums, educate the general public, which are the board members or the co-op members, all of the access, all of the resources that are available, and try to stir interest in those who feel as though they are suited to run for a board seat.
Wow, so they can get training, they can learn leadership skills, and there's also resources that can help them learn how to set up a campaign, and even resources where they might get some funding to help them run for a campaign for a board seat on any electric co-op that exists, right?
Any electric co-op that exists. And all of this training and resources, those things are free.
are free. You hear
because
that,
they are
audience? Free.
free because they're provided through grant initiatives, so they are free. So we are very, very dedicated to finding those candidates. Just recently, we have 3 candidates that are being vetted for Fairfield County, Fairfield Co-op Board, and then also Santee Electric. We have 2 candidates that we've identified.
Mhm. And what do because most people don't know there are boards of directors. They don't know that, hey, all I know is I pay my electric bill, and if there's something wrong, I feel there's nothing I can do about it. I don't realize I have a voice. What do these boards look like? What's people are always talking about, I like to call it the Jedi principles. It's like the Jedi warriors you see on Star Wars: justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. That's what a lot of people are fighting for. What's the diversity? What's the board makeup? What do most of these electric co-op boards, what do they look like?
The traditional co-op board is mostly male and mostly all Caucasian. Um, we have, we are trying to get women elected, Black women, Hispanic women, Hispanic men, Black men, Native American. So the traditional board, it looks like what we would historically say, or would say or envision a board to be, mostly, older, middle-aged, white men. But we are looking to place or have placed on the board more diversity. DEI is very, very significant in what we do: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's our thrust, to be able to have boards mirror what the membership looks like. Because if
Mhm.
we want our interests heard, we got to have it, you got to mirror what we look like.
Absolutely, because, and it's not a thing of racism or privilege, but let's be honest. Communities are different. They have different needs,
Yes.
and the people who live in those communities are the ones who best know those needs, know the conditions, how to speak to them, and how to correct them. So that's something that's amazing that you're working on this. So how do you so I keep hearing you say you educate communities and you train people. How do you do this? Do people have to sign up for classes? They have to find you on Facebook? If we wanted you to come to Florence or Marion or Darlington, so that the electric co-op members actually know what their co-ops do and what their benefits are. How do you get this information out to the community?
So what we do, we go out and we contact faith-based leaders in the communities, because in these marginalized communities, the spiritual piece and the faith-based piece, that's a big component in reaching, the populace. So we are in contact with faith-based leaders, community leaders statewide, and then we put that information out there and we advertise when we have community forums and town halls, so that people will have that information. We have an arsenal of master level interns that work with us. So then we send them out, flyer distribution. We have a Facebook presence, and we also have a website presence. But we try to use public service announcements to make sure that the public is informed. Those co-op members are informed that, there's a town hall and you're meeting in your town, and this meeting would be of interest to you, because we're going to go over different objectives that you may not be aware of, that may help you or help you make a selection in voting for a board member.
And I can see, uh, you reaching out to faith leaders because you call them marginalized communities, especially rural communities that don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of institutions. And most rural communities and a lot of neighborhoods the biggest institution you have that can reach the most people is the church, is the
Is
mosque, right? Mhm.
right, is the church. So that's how we still get a lot of our information out in those rural communities. We depend on the church to disseminate that information or to remind or to highlight those things that, some of our objectives, among their parishioners. And we
Yes.
tried to come from a stance that we want you, as a co-op member, we want you to realize that are you're an investor because you're paying these electric bills. So you're an investor and you own part of that entity.
Mhm. And co-ops have programs like energy efficiency programs, don't they? Where you can what they come in and check your home, or uh I know they had a thing called Help My House. I don't know if they still do it. But well, I know some utilities and co-ops have programs where they can actually come in and help you, with your windows or your doors, where you're
Yes.
actually heating and cooling the outdoors, have a greater energy burn. If your house isn't tight, you're heating it outdoors. That's why your bill is so high.
They have several programs that can help you to make sure your house is weatherized and it is energy efficient. I know Santee Electric have what they call the roundup, and most co-ops have that, where each member, we tell them about this and we talk about this in our trainings, but in our community forums. The roundup, it may be $1.50, and you may have been paying it for the last 30, 40 years. But that roundup amount, it provides for if you need a new heating unit or a cooling unit, you need to weatherize your house with the windows, the doors, or appliances. But then there are certain application periods, and not everybody read the South Carolina Living magazine that comes out from the co-op, but all that information is there. And then we encourage them that, yes, the co-op is communicating with you all of the information that you would actually need if you would just read that book that comes. But then we got to think about literacy too. So that's why we have these town halls, so that we can, educate and we can explain, verbatim what options are available. That roundup, it provides if you need to weatherize your house or get energy efficient appliances to make sure that your energy bills are low and not, out of the box.
Mhm. And so you could get these things done. You have to pay out of pocket, or do they put an addition on your bill, or is
Well,
this money in a
you've
pot, or how does that work?
it's money in a pot because you've contributed to it. Every time you pay an electric bill, you contribute to it. So
Mm,
these things, you just have to make application when the application period comes open. And see, that's the thing. A lot of people in, your rural communities and people that are not informed don't know when those application periods occur, when they open and when they close. So that's another thing that we are actively working on, making sure that the co-op members know when they can access those services if they need them. Because if you may miss a day, or within the closing period, and you need that energy efficient unit. But if you miss that day, then you're out. And those units are very, very expensive. So we just want to make sure that the members know their time frames for their particular co-op.
mm. So can you mind, Vanessa, if just give me a moment? I want to say something to the faith leaders, to the preachers and the pastors out there who may be having a church or serving in a church. Young man, young woman, elder, you need to listen to this, because so many of your members, when you go to visit them because they're sick, or they're shut in, or they're having you know what the condition of their homes look like. And it would be wonderful if we were the advocates and we could educate our members about that. That's part of the caring and serving. And so if a church wanted you to come and do, you said two things, a forum, a townhouse, education, what's the difference between them? And if they want to connect with you, what do they do for their members, for the co-op members?
We hold the town halls when we have candidates that we want to present to the members, so that they can meet and greet, and they can query those candidates to find out what their platforms are and what they can do for them if elected to the board. Our community meetings and interest meetings and informational meetings, those are for the direct co-op members to get that information that I talked about, information on how to access, your services or your membership services and resources for your particular co-op. So it's two different types of meetings, but the town hall, we try to have those candidates there and those other partners that we work with, like some of the partners we work with are, like I mentioned, Watershed Conservation Voters of South Carolina, SCASIT. We've been involved with New Alpha, CDC, South Carolina Justice Coalition, the Mighty Chariot Wheel, Sustaining Way, and like I said, the faith-based leaders and community leaders. Most times we have these meetings in a church, dining area or assembly area where they have community forums. So we're able to draw those members as well as other community people, in a neutral type of setting to disseminate that information. And then our contact information, you can reach us at 803-696-2490. That's our office phone number. And then our email is allaboardforjustice@gmail.com. And then we also have a Facebook presence, and our website, we are getting that up and back rolling because we just had a few hiccups with that.
Okay, great. And we're going to want you to repeat that again at the end of the program. So folks, if you don't have a pen or paper, for the older folks and for you young folks who would just record it with your cell phone, she's going to repeat that again at the end of the program. But electric co-op, working with electric co-op members, and that's only part of what All Aboard for Justice does. And the more you say, the more I really appreciate that name. Everybody aboard for justice. So what's some of the other things that you do and your interns and colleagues do, Vanessa, besides working with electric co-ops?
Because our background is majority of our volunteers and the administrators, we have a background in social work. So this budget year, we are looking at kind of like moving more. We're still going to work on energy justice and environmental justice, but we're trying to look more into the social service provisions to those persons in rural counties in South Carolina that wouldn't necessarily have access to social welfare services. We're going to look at the disparities and inequities and see whether or not we can bring some of that where we can provide the same level of service. Say if you live in a town of King Street, you may get more services because you're closer to Waccamaw EOC. But if you live out in the hinterlands of Neesmith or maybe Johnsonville or maybe Cades Hebron, then you may not be able to have access to transportation and other types of services to actually get into Waccamaw EOC to get those different resources when they're needed. So our scope is going to just change a little bit to concentrate more on the social aspect of it and making sure that the social welfare piece is distributed in an equitable, diverse, and inclusive capacity. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. But our service provisions, like I said, we provide community education forums in the form of town halls, interest meetings, community meetings. We got advocacy forums where we educate persons how to advocate on your behalf, how to get out there and and ask for or find those resources to remedy problems in your community. Also, policy reviews. We always have interns because we got an arsenal of interns from schools all over South Carolina and as well as schools outside of the state. But they look at policy reviews, they look at bills, House bills, and all of those things that are coming up, anything that deals with social service, social welfare, and energy justice, energy reform, any of that types of stuff. So we work on that all the time. Then we provide, like I say, the training and support for the co-op candidates. We go out, locate those persons, then we have them vetted by those partners that we work with and that can provide that support they need to actually establish a campaign and get it going and running. Then we train, like I said, an arsenal or professional students. We mostly train master level students and PhD students, those persons that are, they're writing dissertations or they have some level of responsibility to academia and research, because that helps forward what we want to do in terms of grant initiatives and other types of things that we want to do. But we do take bachelor level students, but we mostly focus on the more advanced students because of the level of work that we do. And then we try to collaborate with other economic justice, environmental justice, and social justice service agencies and organizations, the ones that are charged with promoting healthy living among marginalized groups and populations. But as we go, we're going to be adding more. But right now we got a lot in our basket to tend to.
Well, when you're ready to add something else to your basket, there's something that has perplexed me for quite a while. And this goes back, and I won't say the name of the agency, but I was, when we were rehabbing houses and doing some of that kind of work, we're talking about early 2000. And I was curious. I wanted to know, why is it that when we're in rural areas, when we're out in the Atlantas and out in rural areas, how come we don't see apartment complexes? And I asked about that to this agency, and I'm like, first of all, a lot of young people, they may not own land, they don't have the money to build a house, and maybe they don't want to get a trailer, and there's no apartments that they can stay in until they save enough money to buy land to get a house. So what happens is they leave the rural community of their birth because they have to go into a city that has apartments. And that's, you say you do research. I don't understand that. And when I asked, I was told that they didn't want to build apartments in the countryside because they wanted people to be closer to social services. But I found that it's like, so you're going to force people to leave their community?
Yeah, and see, that's creating barriers for change. It just creates barriers for change because you force young people to leave and then your talent is walking away to other counties and other, urban type areas so that they can access housing and all that. So yeah, on down the road, we have our strategic planning and strategic outlook, but we would like to provide financial literacy, provide that type of literacy that would encourage young people to stay in their communities and encourage home ownership and that type of things. We have too much talent just going to other places and contributing to other places when we got our own homegrown talent that could stay there and really make a dynamic impact.
Absolutely. And if the young people stayed as the population grows, then there would be a need for businesses. There would be a need for daycare. There would be a greater need to have a supermarket, etc. So, just the fact that we're not, there's limited rental housing out in rural communities means that, as you said, it's creating a barrier, stifling the community economic growth of those areas. And so, if that's in your wheelhouse, if that's part of your strategic plan. I would love to see that move forward because so many of our rural communities are becoming low income. The population is aging or is older, and so many of them are on fixed income because the young people have to leave, right?
Yeah, they have to leave and go because they have their young families and they want their families to be exposed and afforded opportunities so that they can have a healthy life and healthy production and grow up to be a contributing part of society. So a lot of young people they flee. Once they get their education, they don't come back home. They have um, no mind of returning home to contribute to their town.
But there's no incentive, and the pay is not there.
Right.
They can't find good paying jobs to sustain themselves. So a lot of the social justice work that you do, I guess, is referring people to DSS and places like that, right?
Yes, we refer them to, our more established traditional types of social welfare system, which would be DSS, DHEC, the different COGS that are set up across the state that address issues in low income areas, but we refer them to those places too. But then we also try to tap into non-traditional types of places like, United Way, but United Ministries and some of the churches, they provide that lack that the agencies, your more traditional agencies may not have. Maybe they run out of funding for a funding period. So, we may have a community resource over here, maybe a church ministry that can, pay a bill or provide food or provide
Mhm.
clothing or whatever.
Yeah, and every now and then I'm going to jump in because you and I know what some of these acronyms mean, but some of our audience members may not. So you said COGS, and COGS
Uh,
are everywhere. So can you explain to the audience what is a cog? It's not a wheel. It's not a part in your watch or your clock, right?
Yeah, but we in South Carolina, we have what we call the regional COGS. Because I'm in Manning, I'm in the Santee Lynch's River Regional COG, and it's Council on Governments. And Council on Governments, what they do is they support the infrastructure and the structure of local governments with providing them with grant assistance, providing them with programs to help low income and your marginalized communities. They go out and they basically do some of the same things that our thrust is and our initiatives, in a community agency. They look at what's not there or what's needed, and then they provide the grants or the programs to try to lessen that disparity and bring a community up to what's going on universal across the country. So that's what our COGS do. They got the PD COG. Second, I can tell you what the regions are.
And they also work with like the workforce improvement act agencies. And so say, for example, I'm an electrician
Mhm.
and I'm certified and I want to train young people how to be electricians. One of the ways the car can help you make that happen, right?
They can. They have training programs because they have different programs. They have like an aging program. They have an urban planning program. Um, they have a vocational or employment program as well. So they have different types of departments that can actually address those disparities throughout, the areas that they cover.
And do you have to be a special person to go to, say, the PD Council on Governments, or can anybody go in there and see how they could work with them or what opportunities there are, maybe to help with or find resources for urban planning, say, in East Florence or North Florence or something like that?
Well, in your designated area, if you are, say, a community agency, or you can go in for that particular division, whatever you're looking for, you can go in there and see what resources they would have and how they can work with you to possibly expand your program or get your program out there. But then also individuals, like I talked about the vocational piece, job piece, individuals can actually access the COG for jobs that are in the area where they provide training and they provide job placement and just community-based programs and economic development initiatives. They have all of that there.
Mhm. And it's so sad because I guess you found, like I found, that a lot of people don't even know these things exist, right?
A lot of people don't know you the job training that's valuable, the aging resources. You might need a ramp on a house, or you may need some kind of assistance for, a disabled adult. They have all that type of information and access to capital. You may want to have a project funded. They have access to capital or can help you steer you in the right direction to actually access that capital. Housing improvements, we talked about that. And then any type of government assistance, they have it for community and economic development.
Wow, no, that's really amazing. That so few people know about this, and thank God for organizations like All Aboard for Justice. And the more you talk, the more I understand, hey, why you say all aboard for justice, that everybody has to come together so that we can have justice in our community, social justice, economic justice, etc. So do you find that there are particular groups of people that are really, really in need of assistance? I know that we often talk about people who are aged. Um, what about returning citizens, people who are just released from prison or jails and they're trying to make a better life, the underemployed? Do you focus on certain segments of our community, or do you find that there's some segments of our community that have greater needs than, say, the average person who has a job? And you know what I mean?
Right. Our focus has been on the aged persons, children, women, and now we have, we have to recognize that we have single men that are raising children. So it's age, children, women, and then single men that have households. We haven't focused a lot on those persons returning to society from prison and other types of institutionalized care. We haven't focused on that, but that's something that we're looking to as well, because we would like to reduce or have some impact on the reduction of recidivism rate. We would really like to have an impact, more work programs, more outlets, because a lot of times when you got people that are released from prison, there are not a lot of options. I mean, they give they move them to a halfway house, then they give them a work release or whatever. But then when they're actually out here and trying to plug back into society, they don't have those supports that are needed to keep them and sustain them in society. And so then you see the recidivism rate, it stays the same.
Yeah,
They're gonna be right
recidivism,
back in the same
they go
situation.
back to jail, right?
They
That
go back to
for
jail.
people don't
And,
understand that. Yeah.
right. And sometimes it's so hard out here in society and reconnecting that jail becomes an option. Returning becomes an option. And it should not be that way.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually talking with one of my members about that earlier today, and I was telling her that there's a thing that some people say who've been incarcerated and they find themselves struggling out here, and they purposely go back to jail or prison, and the saying is, at least I have 3 hots and a cot, meaning that they have 3 meals a day that are guaranteed, and they have a roof over their head and a place to sleep. And I mean, it's really horrible, but it's a reality, right, Vanessa?
It is. It's definitely a reality. And that's just sad that you would think that you would need to return to an institution in order to be able to have that roof over your head, be able to get 3 meals a day. I mean, that's just sad that society is like that. We are designed like that, that, is an option. It should not be an option. It shouldn't be an
Mhm.
option. Mhm.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something you brought up that I don't think of very often. I never thought of it as being widespread. I know that there's a lot of grandparents out there that are raising their grandchildren, but you said a lot of men are now they are the ones who are taking care of their children, not the women. And what's happening with some of the women? Because generally it's the man that's missing in the home, not the woman.
Well, as time moves on, we see more women that are absent parents, more women that have chosen not to be there, not to be that nurturer. So we have so many men that had to fill in or go ahead and step up to be that nurturer, to be that parent. So, the trends and the times are just changing. And that comes along with all of the different types of negative and adverse impacts on society, now with the, drug uses and, everybody's, everybody, people don't want to work anymore. I mean, there's just so many different factors that play into it. You know, Parents are just not like they used to be. So our traditional idea or traditional concept of parenting has just made a total 360. So
Mhm.
I would like to see, and we're going to work on more programs that address that absent mother, that father that's having to raise
Mhm.
2 girls, or that father's having to raise a family of 4 by himself. We want to concentrate on that as we go.
Right. And you talk about, and you hear a lot of reasons why people say people don't want to work, and they blame it on the pandemic, and they blame it on so many different things. I sometimes wonder, and you're the one with the social work background and you talk with folks, but I sometimes wonder, is it a matter of people just, especially young people, they just don't have the same incentive. They look around and there's very little job security. It's not like, well, as long as I come to work and keep my nose clean, I'll work on this job for 20, 30 years. I won't get fired. They don't have, there's no guarantee long-term jobs, very few of them now. And they look around and it's like, well, I can work real hard, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to afford to purchase a home or to have the things that my parents or my grandparents had. And I wonder, if is that like one of the disincentives where people just give up. They just say, hey, why work so hard? Why try? I don't see myself making it or attaining the things that generations before me got.
Yes, we have this what we call when we're meeting and just having our roundtable discussions, pandemic induced layoffs, and just like the younger generation, they like flexibility. So we're having this big retention challenge. We're trying to keep good workers and stable workers. And I think a lot of young people, just from a social work's perspective, they just feel as though they have limited career options, and they feel as though the traditional jobs, there's limited advancement and mobility. And,
Hmm.
and if they have the least bad experience at work or in the past, then they take that as a measure for their next experience. So you see, they're not going back because they think that, every situation or every job is going to be the same, a work
Hmm.
atmosphere. Then, you have a lot of younger people, they're in that tech type of age where they're influenced by AI and influenced by these games
Hmm.
and all this other stuff. So their mental and physical health is not necessarily intact. So if they
Hmm.
don't get the mental and the physical um, help that they need, they're not going to be motivated to do much of anything but what they're doing. And then they got a lack of good role models and mentors just within their communities and what they see, because they're so attracted to all this AI stuff and all the games. And then a lot of them are just having enough money to live, and they are learning to accommodate themselves or get by on little or no money without working. So
Mhm,
it's just a whole nother mindset and a whole nother type of animal, I guess we could say, we're looking at in terms of young people, and why we're having such a difficulty with retention. It's just getting them to work, and then retention challenge. You can't get them to stay.
mhm. And that's why I said excuse me, the looking and saying, hey, if I just work hard, I will be able to advance.
Mhm.
They just don't see that, you know.
They can't see it.
Mhm. I
Yeah, they
mean,
can't.
I'm working this job, but tomorrow a robot may take my job.
Right.
Excuse me. Mhm.
Hmm.
And so they have no incentive like generations before, where I'm going to work in a field, but then I'll get a job in a plant. And then from the job with the plant, maybe I'll be able to go to the post office. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And those were, career options, but now, the kids just see everything as non-traditional. A lot of things that, we experienced back in the day, they just think that that's just, it doesn't work. They think that it does not work. So we got to figure out or come up with some ways that we can be a little bit creative, and because, you hit the term that they're so woke until they're too woke for themselves, but we gotta figure out how we can shake them while they're so woke and let them get back to some of the traditional values, because those things do work.
Because some, excuse me, sometimes you shouldn't be woke.
Right.
Sometimes you should be dreaming about what your tomorrow should be, and not
Yeah,
being woke all the time, right?
that's right. That's
Mhm,
right. Yeah,
mhm,
sometimes you should have some sort of vision or dream as to, what you can contribute, what you can do. But it's kind of disheartening. But those of us who are out here, like myself and you and others, we just got to figure a way to get these people stimulated, to get them, motivated to want to go to work and want to contribute.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and a lot of it is like you don't have to become a billionaire. You
Right.
can be like the people we saw. Okay, I have a friend, he's been an electrician, and he's in his 80s now. The only thing he's ever done was be an electrician, but
Hmm.
he raised his children. He bought a home. He helped them buy homes. And I think a lot of it too is that they live in this society where they think success is being a rapper or online influencer, and they don't realize that you can make a decent living and actually become quite, have a lot of financial success just cutting grass, being
Yeah.
a carpenter,
Yes.
being an electrician. You know what I mean?
That's
Uh,
right.
owning a restaurant, being a beautician. And I think they've kind of been seduced by all the glamour and the wealth that they see, and what they don't see is what we saw. They don't see the middle person, the middle income person who is, you know, just a car mechanic. It's not a fancy job. You're not a internet influencer, but my God, they were able to make themselves a wonderful life. And as a matter of fact, the young people are living in their homes, right?
That's right. Most of these young people are living with their parents
Mhm.
because they don't have that overhead expense, so they're living with their parents, and their parents really need for them to get a job and move on. But they look at all the glorified types of things like rappers and some of the other glorified types of occupations, like an online influencer. I mean, that's one in, one in so many million to actually be successful. But they don't look at the stability of someone who's laid a foundation, like you said, a mechanic. You can lay a good foundation, have a good client base, and you can provide yourself with a pretty good living and provide a family with a pretty good, stable living. But that's a piece that we will probably be working on, I'm gonna say in probably about 2 years, that entrepreneurial piece, helping young people realize that they have the talents to possibly start their own businesses, how to get funding, and then how to follow through and and be successful on their own. How to
Mhm.
be successful.
And that's very challenging, especially for, and I'm going to say white and black young people who have grown up in this country, who are native, and when I are Native Americans, I'm not going to say native indigenous people who came here before the Europeans did. 40% of the businesses created in this country are created by immigrants.
Yes,
And that says something.
it
So I'm
does.
glad to see that you guys are going to be moving into that realm too.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So what else are you guys? Is there anything else that you're doing? Because I listened to you when you call some of the organizations you partner with, and I want our audience to be clear on the fact that when I heard you say sustaining way, I was like, wow, that's up in Greenville. And then you
Yeah.
mentioned Fairfax, and Georgetown, where you guys are headquartered in. So you literally work across the state of South Carolina, right?
We do. We have partners across the state, and we try to make sure we're in touch with the partners across the state because we're very concerned with rural South Carolina and the limitations and the limited resources in rural South Carolina. And we could concentrate, mostly on Clarendon, Williamsburg, Georgetown counties, Sumter counties, but and tell you the truth, in terms of energy justice and environmental justice, I think for Manning, we may be the only show in town in that Clarendon County area.
Mm,
I'll just have to double check. But the reason why we got our scope statewide, we want to make an impact because if we can make an impact in Clarendon, maybe we can take those same resources and go to the upstate where it's rural and make an impact there, or go to the low country. So our attention and focus is statewide because we want to
mm,
be able to help the masses, eventually. But right now we're just in Clarendon, Sumter, Williamsburg, Georgetown, and some of the other, outlying areas that we concentrate in heavily now, but we do touch some other parts of the state. Because like I
mm,
said, we got interns from out of state and all over the state that work those parts of the state for us. So we
mhm.
try to make an impact, be it big or small, we try to make an impact statewide.
Well, one thing is that our doors are always open. So if you need a place to come, so that folks can learn how they can improve their homes and their communities because they pay their electric bill to a co-op, or maybe they're interested in serving on the board, getting a paid position, or how they can get training or any of those things. Our doors are open. So if you're trying to get more headway and get more involved with people in the PD region, and we can still, you already have a lot of partners, but if we can connect you to more, we'll be glad to, because this is awesome. And also, we're getting to the end of our time,
Okay.
but I'm sure that there are so many people out there, and we hear this all the time because we bring on fantastic guests like yourself, and people are always telling us how much they like the show and how much they learn. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's people out there right now who have learned something new from Vanessa Boatright, Executive Director of All Aboard for Justice. So why don't you give us a few closing remarks and tell people how they can contact you?
Yes, thank you so much for having me today. And then I would be remiss if I don't mention that we also we are looking at the disaster resiliency, which we plugged into New Alpha, and they have provided a dynamic resource. And we're going to be partnering with our local FEMA office to cover a certain section of the county for those trained personnel that'll be able to use all of the resources they supplied, the electric bike, the meals ready to eat, the solar panels, the generator, the raft, the life raft. But we are so fortunate to have partnered with New Alpha to be able to realize that disaster resiliency piece of what we do. But you can contact us at 803-696-2490. Then you can email us at allaboardforjustice@gmail.com. We have a presence on Facebook, and shortly we will have our website back up and running. And it's been a pleasure to be here and to share all the things that All Aboard for Justice is currently doing and the things that we plan on doing in the near future. And we hope to be able to make an impact and work with all persons that want to work toward providing healthy lifestyles through environmental justice.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for coming on, giving New Alpha that shout out. We'll talk offline because some folks have gotten together and we actually want to do an exercise, a stimulated exercise in 9 cities that have those kits, where we're going to practice how do we get our people the shelter in place, etc., when there's a disaster. And so I'll let you know about that. We're getting ready to pick a date to do that simulation. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
as usual, if you want to reach me, Reverend Leo Whitberry, you can reach us by going to info@newalphacdc.com. Go to our website, www.newalphacdc.com, or call me at the church that I'm privileged to pastor, Kingdom Living Temple, 843-799-0740. So until next week this time, in order for you to know the things you need to know and to learn the places you need to go, maybe like being a board member on an electric co-op, tune in again next week to the Leo and Larry Show. God bless.